Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Mr. Sanders Twin again, and we are back on the couch. So, today is the first day of daylight savings time, so we all lost an hour of sleep. It was kind of shocking this morning to see that it was an hour later than I thought. But um, the good news is that it is a bright sunny day, and we are reading a new book, and that book is called Ambassador. So before we get reading, I'm just going to show you a little bit about the book. All right, so here is Ambassador. Looks like it got decent reviews. That's good. People like this book. That's a good sign. So we can see the cover. And it there's a looks like a middle school boy, if I were to guess. And he is running away from a spaceship with laser beams pointing down. So definitely seems like an alien invasion of some kind, but I'm going to stop guessing and I'm going to read the little blurb right here. Gabe Fuentes is reading under the covers one summer night when he is interrupted by a creature who looks like a purple sock puppet. The sock puppet introduces himself as the Envoy and asks if Gabe wants to be Earth's ambassador to the galaxy. What sane 11-year-old could refuse? Okay, so I guess Gabe is special for some reason, and he's being chosen by this sock puppet looking guy. Um, Interesting. Some ingenious tinkering with the washing machine sends Gabe's entangled self out to the center of the galaxy. There he finds that Earth is in the path of a destructive alien force, and Gabe himself is the target of an assassination plot. Exactly who wants him out of the way, and why? All right, a lot going on here. So I was right. Aliens are invading, and I guess Gabe is the target of some evil plot to kill him. So I guess he is important enough for the aliens to want out of the way. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started reading Ambassador. Part 1 Selected. Chapter 1 The envoy tossed itself at the world. An ambassador's business had left it stranded on the moon for years and decades. During all that time, it tried to patch together a return capsule from Soviet equipment abandoned on the surface. But this had never actually worked, and now it needed to hurry. So it gave up on the capsule and built a cannon instead. Then the envoy aimed itself and its cannon at the world. This was not the tricky part. Moving through vacuum for several days was not the tricky part either. The Envoy had no ship, no craft, no transportation. So, just to clarify, the Envoy is the purple sock puppet, and he's in outer space. So, when it says vacuum right here, it doesn't mean like a vacuum cleaner. It means that there's like very little gravity. It's, an open like space with nothing. That's what it means. It had only itself, the spherical purple transparency of its own substance. It clenched its outer layers, becoming glass like to bounce radiation away and keep itself from dehydrating. But it remained clear enough to let light in. All of it was sensitive to light. It was its own big purple eyeball. The envoy watched the approaching planet with all of itself and enjoyed the view. The night side of the globe grew large ahead. Constellations of bright and artificial light stretched out across land masses. The envoy expected to land in Russia again, or possibly in China, but North America stretched out below it. The first hints of atmosphere scraped against its skin. The envoy winced. This was going to hurt. This would be the tricky part. The envoy became a blind eye, opaque, closing itself in all its senses. The view was about to become too searingly bright to appreciate. Air turned to plasma against the friction of the envoy's passage. All right, we're going to go ahead and answer the first question. Where does the envoy land? You'll find what you're looking for in this paragraph right here. The envoy expected to land in Russia again or possibly in China, but North America stretched out below it. If you'd like a sentence starter, you can use the envoy lands in blank. All right, let's go ahead and continue. It shed several layers of scorched self. Then it slowed down by expanding, thinning its substance against air currents like the stretched skin of a flying squirrel or a flying fish or a flying squid. It became its own parachute. So, what's clear about this envoy character is that it can change shape, it seems like. So now it's kind of like, spreading sort of wing like extensions to make a safer landing, it seems. It became its own parachute, though it didn't slow down nearly as much as a real parachute would have. The Envoy tumbled into a rough glide. It became transparent again, letting light pass through it, trying to see where it was going and what it was falling towards. It failed to see very much. The Envoy smacked into a small pond in an urban park. The noise and splash startled several geese, ducks, catfish, and turtles. It sank into the mud and muck at the very bottom and felt itself gradually cool, losing the sting of impact. It needed time to collect itself, though not literally, for which it was grateful. Its substance remained in one single piece. A few curious fish tried to nibble the envoy. It tried to ignore them. Then it made a limb and shooed them away. Finally, it stretched out and relearned how to swim. It had been a long time since the envoy had lived in an aquatic environment, but now it remembered how to wave and ripple like a manta ray. It swam up to the surface of the pond. Then it carefully observed the shore, the surrounding park, and the playgrounds. The envoy spent many days floating and recovering from planetfall before it noticed Gabriel Sandro Fuentes. Chapter 2. Gabe sat on a swing and watched his toddler siblings, Andres and Noemi. Noemi sat underneath a plastic slide and poured handfuls of sand over her sandals. Andres, her twin brother, climbed up and down the stairs that led to the slide. He didn't actually like the slide itself, but he loved going up and down the stairs. They both seemed focused and content with what they were doing. Gabe kept a close eye on them anyway. The chains of his swing creaked like door hinges as he swayed back and forth. His friend Frankie sat in the other swing and complained. Gabe was dark and shorter than his average peer, while Frankie was pale, tall, and spindly thin. "Why do you have to babysit today?" Frankie asked. "It's Thursday," Gabe answered, as though that explained everything. "So?" said Frankie. "So my mom tutors on Thursdays. I can't remember what subject she's got today. Might be Spanish, might be math. I hope it's not standardized test prep. She hates test prep. And my sister has a restaurant shift, and then dad has his own shift later. He's making dinner now, so that leaves me to watch the twins." All right, let's go ahead and answer the first question. Why does Gabe have to babysit his siblings? You'll find clues to this question right here. Mom tutors on Thursdays. I don't think we really need to worry about the subjects and the fact she hates test prep, which, I sympathize. And my sister has a restaurant shift. Oh, come on. All right, so mom tutors on Thursdays. And my sister has a restaurant shift, and then dad has his own shift later. He's making dinner now, so that leaves me to watch the twins. If you'd like a sentence starter, you can say, Gabe has to watch the twins because blank. All right, let's go ahead and continue. "Huh," said Frankie, the uncomprehending grunt of an only child who has never had to watch anyone else. "I wish I could come over for dinner. I'd rather have your dad's cooking than eat with my mom while she glares at me. You can't, though, said Gabe. We're supposed to be avoiding each other right now. Yeah, Frankie said sadly. The other kids playing nearby were either very much younger or very much older than Gabe and Frankie. Two older boys played basketball in a court adjacent to the playground. They shouted and cursed each other out. It sounded angry. It sounded vicious. Gabe glanced their way whenever an especially sharp curse cut the air, but it didn't look like they were fighting. Not really. So it was probably just aggressive conversation. The cursing might have been part of their game. Gabe looked back at the twins. Noemi still sat under the slide with her handfuls of sand. Andres kept climbing the stairs. My mom is pretty mad, said Frankie. Have you noticed how she seems to get taller whenever she gets mad? Gabe nodded without looking away from the twins. He had noticed. Frankie's mom turned into a towering statue of wrathful ice whenever she got mad. She's sending me to live with my dad for the rest of the summer, Frankie went on, in California. That got Gabe's attention. Really? Really, said Frankie. She puts me on a plane tonight. Tonight? This was a terrible thing. Frankie was Gabe's only friend within walking distance. They usually spent whole summers together, except for the summers Frankie spent with his dad. And this summer wasn't supposed to be one of those. So we don't have time to talk her out of it? He tried to think of apologies and promises that might somehow appease Frankie's mom. Don't try to talk her out of it, said Frankie. Really? Don't. It won't work. And at least in California, I won't have to see her glare at me for a while. He kicked the sand under his swing with one foot. I think we got the fuel mix wrong. I think we shouldn't have used a metal pipe, Gabe told him. Model rockets are usually paper and plastic, lightweight. They cause less damage when they hit things, and they're less likely to just fall over, spin in place, and spew flames. But the pipe looked like it wanted to be a rocket, just sitting there in the garage, Frankie said. It was all shiny, like it dreamed of becoming a rocket rather than a piece of plumbing. Anyway, thanks for saying it was your idea. You're welcome, said Gabe. It kind of was your idea, said Frankie. No, it wasn't, said Gabe. Did any of the launch furniture survive? None of it, said Frankie, his voice morose. Is lawn furniture expensive? Gabe asked, a bit worried. Probably, said Frankie. I think she plans to take it out of us and leaf raking and snow shoveling later. But right now she doesn't want to see either of us. So she's banishing me to California. She'll probably just ignore you if she sees you around. Were your parents mad? Sort of, said Gabe. Dad tried to be, but he kept laughing. Mom was angrier, but mostly she just was just relieved we didn't die. All right, let's go ahead and answer the next question. Why does Frankie have to live with his dad in California? You'll find clues for this in this paragraph right here. I think we should have used a metal pipe, Gabe told him. Model rockets are usually paper and plastic, lightweight. They cause less damage when they hit things, and they're less likely to fall over, spin in place, and spew flames. And then also, did any of the lawn furniture survive? None of it, said Frankie, his voice morose. So there seems to have been an accident with a model rocket. So hopefully you figure out what happened there. You can use a sentence starter. Frankie has to live with his dad in California because blank. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish up the chapter or chapter 2 and answer the last question. He watched Noemi sift sand. Then he looked for Andres and noticed that Andres was no longer climbing stairs. Gabe couldn't see him. He scanned the various small children, looking for a familiar one. He stood up from his swing, still searching, ready to run but not yet sure which direction to run in. Noemi still sat under the slide. Andres didn't seem to be anywhere. Then Gabe found him finally. The toddler had left the playground, stepped onto the grass, and approached a very old woman sitting on a park bench. The old woman glared at the playground. She watched the children play as though planning to eat them all. Andres toddled right up to her as if he meant to offer himself as a sacrificial meal to spare the other kids. He stood and stared at the old woman. She stared right back at him. Neither moved or spoke until Gabe swooped in, scooped him up, and gave a quick apology. The old lady turned her mighty glare on Gabe. He flinched, retreated to the sandy playground, and put Andres down. The toddler immediately headed for a trio of girls building sandcastles with shovels and buckets. He snatched away one of their shovels when he got there. Hey! The shovel owner shouted. She seemed old enough to have a sense of ownership, but too young to realize that Andres didn't. Gabe moved to intercept. Then several things happened very quickly. Gabe picked up Andres and plucked the plastic shovel from his hand. Andres let out an indignant squawk. The older boys on the basketball court gave a warning shout. Their ball flew away from the court in a high arc headed for the middle of the sandcastles. Before it could land and destroy all the sandy buildings in its path, Gabe kicked the ball like a soccer goalie. It sailed away from the kids, away from the castles, and back towards the basketball court. He did this while holding the squawking Andres. Then he took a breath and smiled, proud of his reflexes and also a little surprised. One of the older boys cursed Gabe out for kicking their ball. One shouldn't ever kick a basketball, apparently, and the other grinned and shouted thanks. Gabe waved to both of them as though they had said the same thing, and maybe they had. He returned the plastic shovel to the castle building girl, who took it as her rightful due and went back to work. Then Gabe put Andres down and checked to make sure that Noemi was still under the slide. She wasn't. She was running away from the playground, downhill and toward the duck pond. She laughed the shrieking laugh of forbidden freedom. Your baby sister's making a break for it, Frankie said, helpfully pointing at Noemi but not moving otherwise. Gabe hoisted Andres back up again, dropped him into an infant swing to contain him, and sprinted after his sister. He caught her at the very edge of the pond. Splashy, she yelled while Gabe marched her back up the hill. Splashy, splashy, ducks, ducks, meow. Ducks say quack, Gabe told her. Meow. They got back to Andres, who was trapped in a swing and crying. That set off Noemi, so Gabe pushed them both in the swings for a bit until they cheered up. That was smooth, said Frankie, who hadn't budged from his own swing the whole time. That was ninja-like. Thanks, said Gabe. He wanted to point out that Frankie could have helped rather than just sitting there and watching, but he didn't bother. I'd rather be a pirate than a ninja, said Frankie. They argued about that for a while. It was an old argument between them. Gabe would rather be quiet and precise than boisterous, loud, and sloppy. He preferred throwing stars to cannon fire, but Frankie liked to be loud. Gabe strapped the twins into their double stroller once they were both laughing and happy. Each seat had a 5-point harness, as though the stroller were secretly a space capsule. Time to go home, he said. He didn't want to go. The afternoon had suddenly become the very end of Gabe and Frankie's shared summer. But it was still time. I guess so, said Frankie. You'll have fun in California, said Gabe, trying to put the best spin on it, even though he was still disappointed and grumpy about the whole thing. That rocket pipe had been a dumb idea all around, but Gabe had gone along, taken the blame for it afterward, and now faced a friendless summer. He shouldn't have let Frankie light that fuse. Sure, said Frankie without enthusiasm. I'll have fun. They argued about Batman and Zorro while they walked home. Lately, they had taken to watching old Batman cartoons and older Zorro cartoons online at Frankie's house. Both cartoon heroes were rich gentlemen who wore masks, hid in caves, and named themselves after stealthy animals. But otherwise, they were completely different. So which one would win in a fight? Frankie wanted to know. They wouldn't ever get into a fight, said Gabe. He said it quietly as a known and simple fact. But what if they did? Frankie asked, his voice very much louder. They wouldn't fight, Gabe repeated. It wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen. What if they fought by mistake? Frankie pressed him. Maybe one of them was framed or hypnotized or possessed by evil alien ghosts or something like that. Zorro would still find a way to avoid it, said Gabe. Batman would come at him all brooding and serious, and Zorro would just say something charming, or else make him laugh, and then the fight would be over before it even started because you can't crack up laughing and still be Batman. Zorro would make a game out of it. If Batman got possessed by aliens, then the aliens wouldn't care about Zorro's sense of humor, Frankie pointed out. None of Zorro's jokes would make sense to aliens. You can't say for sure what would make sense to aliens, said Gabe, and Zorro would parry anything Batman threw at him. He'd duck and weave and snap batarangs out of the air with his whip. Also, batarang is a dumb word. How could anyone who carries a belt full of batarangs take themselves so seriously? Frankie's voice got even louder. I can't hear you over the sound of how wrong you are. It's deafening, your wrongness. They stopped at a street corner. Gabe needed to turn left to get home. Frankie's place was off to the right. Don't burn anything at your dad's, Gabe told him. You'll probably start a whole forest fire out there. If I turn on the news and all of California's burning, I'll know it's your fault. Don't have fun without me, said Frankie. No fun. I probably won't, said Gabe. They did their secret handshake, which was complicated. Then both of them went home. The envoy moved slow to the ground. The envoy moved low to the ground between hedges and trees, still dripping with pond water. Gabe didn't notice it following him. All right, let's answer that last question. Who is following Gabe on his way home? It's a pretty simple question with a simple answer. You'll find that in this little paragraph right here. The envoy moved low to the ground between hedges and trees, still dripping with pond water. Gabe didn't notice it following him. You can use a sentence starter. Blank is following Gabe home. All right, everybody, that is it for chapters 1 and 2. I hope you enjoyed starting Ambassador and you're into the story. I certainly am. I'm wondering what's going to happen with this Envoy character and Gabriel. Obviously, the Envoy takes an interest in him, so we'll see what happens next. Until then, take care.